really nice to be up here. I do feel a bit tall. I'm not used to looking down. I'm vertically challenged, as they say, so normally I'm looking up. And it's been a strange journey here, arriving here and through coming to Action for Happiness, because I came across positive psychology, I don't know, 8-9 years ago at a conference. I'd never heard of it. I'd studied psychology as a degree, and came across positive psychology at a conference, a workplace conference, and I thought, just a light bulb moment, that this has to make a difference to the future, and I wanted it to be part of my future. I wanted it to be part of that future. So I found out where to study it. I went to the States to study it. My friends thought I'd lost it, going to the States to study positive psychology at that time. And when I finished, 2 days after I finished, I was on a plane going to another conference, and I was very much sitting at the back, in the cheap seats, as it were, and I was lucky enough to get upgraded. And I found myself sitting next to Anthony Selden, who's one of the founders of Action for Happiness, before Action for Happiness was out there in the world. And I started chatting to him, and he knew the person I'd studied with, Martin Seligman. We started chatting. I said, I'm just coming back to the UK, and I really need to find out what's happening there. And he said, I've got just the person for you to meet. We've just recruited the Director of Happiness, Mark, to Action for Happiness. So 2 weeks later, I was having coffee with Mark, and he said, well, how do you help us out with the psychology for our new movement, for our website? 6 months later, extended sabbatical, where with a whole team of fantastic volunteers developing the 10 keys for Action for Happiness and the psychology on the website. So it's really nice to be here. But in terms of just understanding who's here for the first time? Just stick your hand up. Great, right. Who's here because of Psychology's magazine? And who's here that's been to one of our events before? As one of our, yes, so half new, half old-timers. That's great, that's fantastic. Well, those of you that have been here before know that we kind of like to get people talking and thinking. So I'm going to kick us off by doing that. So I want you we're going to ask you to do what I call the kind of 3-2-1 activity. So I'm going to ask you to talk to 3 people, really quickly, just people around you. Just going to give you 2 minutes to do that. And with each person, I want you to share one thing that makes you happy and listen to one thing of theirs. Perhaps each person you talk to share a different thing that makes you happy. Just super quick. So 3 people, 2 minutes, one thing. Go.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here. You can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way.
What makes you happy? Sorry? What? The sun. Fantastic this morning, yeah? Sorry? Family. Yeah, great. Dancing. Fantastic. Singing. Music. Being outside. There's a whole range of things. And it's different for all of us. Some of the things we share, some things are different. Some things at different times. And it's a whole range. Matthew Rickard, who was our first speaker and is coming later in May, as Mark said, just says, happiness is actually quite a lot to it. He said it's more than just a fleeting emotion. Sometimes we use happiness in the word happy in that way. But he describes it as being more of an optimal state of being, which I really like. But here's the question. Is focusing on our own happiness, a selfish thing? Is that a selfish thing? No? Why? Why not? Yeah, well, to some extent that's true. There's research, this is Christakis and Fowler, that look at the sort of contagion effects of health behaviours and indeed our mood states. And they found that our mood states can travel as much as 3 degrees of separation away from us. So that means we are impacting people we have never met, and people we have never met are impacting how we feel. Lots of other behaviours as well, but this mood state seems to be up to 3 degrees of separation away. Does that mean we have to be happy all the time? Oh, God, what a fantastic group! It was brilliant. No, but what it does do, what this research for me triggers, is that actually perhaps we have a responsibility to just consider the impact we're having on other people and manage that. But also it's a responsibility, because I think it's, and be conscious of other people's feelings as well, because they impact us. And it's interesting, because we know that a lot of the ingredients that go into making us happy, from the research, the 10 keys, many of you will be familiar with this framework that we developed, when we looked at all the psychological research that we could find, and found the main things, areas where we can take action in our own lives that impact, how happy we feel. But interestingly, the first two, and very deliberately the first two, are about doing things for others and relating and connecting with other people. And I'm going to talk a bit more about those later, but just to kind of romp through the others, because we'll dig into some of these over the course of the next 50 minutes or so. But the others, we clearly haven't got time to do everything. But just to give you a flavour. So exercising. It's interesting, we all know exercising is good for our bodies, but how many of us realise the impact it has on our brains? So exercising, a certain amount of aerobic activity, raising your heart rate by about 30%, so not kind of knocking yourself out or running a marathon, can be as effective for some types of depression as taking antidepressants. John Ratey, who's I love John Ratey, a Harvard psychiatrist. He's one of the world's experts on exercise in the brain. And his view is that exercise is not just good for our bodies, it's actually primarily evolved to look after our brains. Because they've found that when we do physical activity, aerobic activity, it increases our cognitive functioning. Kids do better at school if they exercise before school. People do better at cognitive functioning tests when we exercise beforehand. So when he says if you've got an important meeting or something that's really important, he said go for a run, which I did this morning. But I call it a joggle, actually. I wouldn't call it running. So appreciating, noticing the world around us. This is about being in the here and now and noticing those good things. Trying out is about, again, really about our brain. And our brain is like a muscle. You use it or you lose it. So learning new things, trying new stuff, pushing and challenging ourselves in things that we know already is really important for our brains. Of course, as human beings, we like to, we have a natural desire to make progress and feel a sense of competence and goals, and having a sense of direction is really important. And these don't have to be huge life goals, because I'm not even sure I know what my kind of life goals are. But micro goals, there's increasing research that small daily goals can make us feel better, feel happier. Resilience is about resilient thinking, really, and thinking about understanding that our thoughts drive our emotions, that things, when somebody doesn't make us angry or things don't make us sad, those are natural responses. It's kind of how we think about those things that makes that, and sometimes our thoughts aren't accurate. So resilience is about that. Emotion is about, understanding that our emotions have different effects, and positive emotions, and I'll talk a little bit about that shortly, are particularly important. I'm also going to talk a bit today about acceptance, because I think this is one of the big causes of unhappiness. Albert Ellis, who's the father of CBT, says we are remarkably good at disturbing ourselves. And one way that we do that is by not feeling we're good enough. And so I'll talk a bit about that. And of course, meaning, which is about thinking about how we connect to something beyond ourselves, really having a sense of purpose. And it's interestingly, we end with meaning, but often a lot of what provides meaning in our life is our connections with others. So, of course, all of this comes from positive psychology, and many of you will know this, but for those of you who may not have encountered this, psychology, really up until the 90s, was predominantly focused on the causes and cures of dysfunction. So there was for very good reason, why people get sick and how do we cure that. But Martin Seligman, in the late 90s, really changed the game. And he said, actually, thinking about how we cure dysfunction and stop people being sick is not the same as what enables people to kind of really live their best lives, to flourish. So, like from a physical health point of view, we get that, but we don't usually think about that from a psychological point of view. So we know I might not be physically sick, but I might not be at my peak physical fitness or even remotely close to that. So really, if we think about that from a psychology point of view, then how do we kind of be happier and flourish? So that's psychology. And the great thing about this is, a lot of stuff in the 10 keys, it's not new. If you had to sit down and come up with a list of things that make you happy without knowing any of the science, you probably come up with a not dissimilar list. But we live in an evidence-based society. And what this change in psychology did has given us more evidence and growing. It's grown exponentially in the last 18 to 20 years. The body of research is growing exponentially because it feels like it's a really important thing to study alongside and to balance out the causes and cures of dysfunction. So, we're going to get to digging into a few of the keys. But it was one of those days when I woke up this morning and I thought, it's a really beautiful sunny day, and I haven't been outside joggling for a couple of months because it's been cold and wet. So I went for a joggle. I do, my little trotting around the park. So this is my local park. And sometimes things kind of fall in place. But I was thinking about this talk tonight and what particularly I was going to focus on. And as well as noticing the frost and the first crocuses, which was rather lovely, I noticed this tree that had just been planted in memory of someone. I don't know who it was, but I think it's a new tree. And this is what it said. I don't know who Julia Foreman was. Clearly she was loved for having the tree. But I thought this was really interesting that it said there, learn to love yourself and be kind. And I don't know whether that's something they were telling her or something she used to tell her friends and family. But those are the things that I think we're going to focus on a little bit today. But to the focus thing is going back to kind of just enjoying the day and about that. Here we go. What I want to say is, as Mark said, we're all about action. So as we go through the activities today, I want you to be thinking about an action you're going to take as a result of today. There's little green cards that you'll fill in. We'll ask you to fill in for yourself at the end. You're not giving to anyone else. So actually, it is about action. So as we reflect through, think of something. Maybe it will trigger an idea for you that, that I can do, that I'm going to do tomorrow or this week. So have a think about that. So, those of you that have been before or know positive psychology will be very familiar with this, but I was aware that there were a few people here that didn't necessarily know this stuff. So this is a classic positive psychology activity. So I want you should all have a piece of paper, and hopefully you've got a pen. Put your hand up if you haven't got a pen. Somebody will come around and give you one. So I want you to think back on your last 24 hours or so. Don't get too hung up on the time frame, and just think of 3 things you enjoyed, were grateful for, pleased about. Could be tiny, could be something big. For me, it was the fact I went out for a joggle, I noticed the crocuses and got inspired by that sign. So just 3 things, just take a minute or so just to jot down a few things. 3 things that you were pleased about, enjoyed over the last 24 hours. 3 things that you enjoyed, were grateful for, made you smile, gave you a good feeling, and maybe a note or 2 on why. When you've had a chance to write at least 1 or 2 things down, just turn to somebody near you, maybe somebody you haven't spoken to yet nearby, and just share one of your things and listen to theirs. Cutting people off. Okay. Let's hear a few of those. So what were some of the good things that people in this room experienced in the last 24 hours? Laughing with your puppy on the sofa. Lovely. Huh. What sort of dog is it? Border Terrier. Lovely. Yeah. Yes, fantastic. That's lovely, that's great. That's really nice, connecting with others. Fantastic. A couple others.
I spoke to my father while I was on Hampstead Heath this morning walking my dog. And what was lovely, he's 81, and he's quite shy, and I never used to know how to connect with him, but today he was just opening up and talking about some stuff that he was passionate about.
Oh, how lovely.
And by the end of the conversation, I was able to heartfelt tell him I loved him in a way that I never used to be able to do. So our relationship has developed over the last few years.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's really nice. So let's hear a couple of other things. Just
coming here with my friend.
Coming here with your friend. Oh, lots about other people. Just one or two more. Over at the back. Oh, here we've got a few hands here.
Hi. I had a wonderful day today. I run art workshops for children as a living.
Yeah.
And I had a wonderful workshop today with my son and 5 other kids.
500?
5.
500.
I can't understand.
God.
No, I don't understand.
Different idea of happiness to mine.
And it was lovely. It was really, really lovely to have them all. And we had a fantastic hour and a half doing stuff and being messy.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Hi. I work with families, and this morning I was with a mother who's got a nightmare history, a really difficult and very challenging history. And we were at the town hall this morning because she's kind of homeless. And we sat down and had a cup of tea together. And I shouldn't be working with her because she's not in the borough that I work in. And she was so vulnerable this morning, and she's had unbelievable amounts of crap in her life. And I'm really interested in this person as a human being. I think she's got unbelievable potential because she's been through so much. She's got mental health, she's dealing with all sorts of stuff. And we were in this place, and she was saying, oh, whenever I walk through this place, it was actually in where Primark is, it's in like this place where McDonald's is, and it's like some benign, horrible place. And she said, I always feel so lonely. So I said, well, let's have a cup of tea together. And we were sitting down talking, and I was telling her how wonderful I think she is and how strong she is. And she was holding my hand and saying, it's so hard for me to imagine that somebody else is interested in me. And it's those conversations where you are really listening to somebody. You're showing them love, you're showing them respect. You're not scared to be in their company because they've got huge amounts of baggage. And it's that connection that you can make with somebody else. There is so much potential to give to another human being by showing love, respect and empathy.
And it doesn't take much,
it's free.
does it? Yeah.
It's free.
We're going to
It's your
touch on that.
time.
We're going to touch on that shortly. That's really nice. So we've had some. What's lovely is there's a range of things here, from big conversations like that, conversations, meeting some amazing people, fantastic conversations with your dad, aged 81. That's transformative conversation. To things, simple things like walking our dog, or for me, noticing the crocuses and the frost side by side this morning. So small things that really we get, and it's what this activity is. This simple activity, just writing these things down. How long did it take to write a few things down, and why? A couple of minutes? Yeah, it doesn't take long, does it? But you know what this is? It's a brain retraining exercise. Because we are, as human beings, we're hardwired to notice the things that go wrong, or the dangers and risks. We're hardwired to focus on those, because in evolutionary terms, that's kind of enabled us to survive. But when we focus on what's wrong, and it's important to do, it's important to notice those things, because sometimes it could be a source of danger coming towards you. But what that does do is it narrows your perceptual fields. Because if you've got, say, I don't know, a mad dog running towards you, the subject of dogs, a sort of out of control dog running towards you, you want to be focused on that source of danger, so that you don't want to be smelling the roses. You can see where it's coming from, and then you can make a decision whether to fight or flee. But when we experience good things, when we focus on the good things, when we experience more pleasant emotions, that opens our perceptual fields. We literally see more. We are more open to other people. We recognise people from other cultures better. We are more creative and flexible in our thinking. And what that does, these things do, little by little by little, this builds our psychological resources. If we are more open and trusting of other people, we build stronger and more social connections. If we are more open to ideas, creative in our problem solving, etc., we learn more, and that builds our capabilities. But often these good things happen, very often. I mean, lots of good things happen. Even on the worst days, you can usually find one or two tiny things. And so by stopping and noticing these, we literally retrain our brain, not to ignore the bad things, but to just notice the good things and to squeeze the goodness out of those that would just float by. And when this was done in a scientific experiment, it was found that people did this exactly the same exercise as you did. They did it each night for 1 week, and then the impact of it was measured. People's psychological well-being was measured, their happiness was measured for up to 6 months later, and also their propensity towards depression-type symptoms. They weren't a depressed population, but we can all show depression-type symptoms from time to time. And it was found that over 6 months, people's happiness increased, and they tended to show fewer depression-type symptoms. Not bad for an investment of a couple of minutes a night, a week. So maybe something that you want to try. So, let's switch on to another subject, because I said the first two keys were around giving and relating to other people. And one of the guys that I studied with, Chris Peterson, psychology professor, and somebody who'd really worked a lot on his happiness, because he was quite a dour character, but he really worked on this and lived it. He said, if you want to remember one simple rule to increase your own happiness, is just remember other people matter. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, because this is something that's so central to Action for Happiness. So giving, we talked a lot about giving, some lovely examples here. Listening to others, how that can be a giving act. But some really interesting facts. Because the science shows that if we are happier, we tend to give more. And by giving, I mean it could be time, it could be attention, it could be money, helping other people. But the curious thing is when we help other people, it makes us happier. When we are given a gift or a compliment or a reward, bonus or something like something nice happens to us, the reward centre in our brain is activated. And curiously, when we help other people, the same thing happens. Our reward centres light up. So I tend to think of this as a sort of social glue. We're social creatures, social species, and to live in social groups, this idea of helping other people with tiny things. They don't have to be big things. Really are what enables us to live in a good world. It connects us to other people. So one thing you might want to reflect on, we're not going to do an activity on this, but as over the rest of the time this evening, think about, is there somebody that perhaps you could help tomorrow in a small way? And thinking about our relationships, evidence suggests that people, if you've got fewer than 3 close relationships, and that doesn't, that's people that you can pick up the phone to share things with, talk to, say hello to. If you're fewer than 3, you are much more likely to suffer from depression, and indeed that leads on to other illnesses and risks. And as much we know, loneliness is a really crippling thing in our society. And it's our close relationships are very important, and our sort of weaker ties, if you like, are important. We know that people who know their neighbours to smile at and say hello. It doesn't mean to say you know everything about them, but you just know who they are and you can smile in recognition. In communities where people know that, there is much less fear, much greater trust, and that leads to much better well-being all round. So that's important. Just simply smiling at people you recognise is great. But our close personal ties, I want to just think about those for a moment, because those are really important. And often the people closest to us are the ones we kind of take for granted. We're quite conscious if we meet a new friend or colleagues at work, we're a bit conscious of how we are with them, and we make a bit of an effort. But with our nearest and dearest, sometimes we don't make very much effort at all. So I want us to think about those for a moment and what we can do to kind of improve those. So here's a quiz question. What predicts the best quality relationships? So this was studies that were done initially with couples, and the couples were asked to rate those the relationships on various factors, and then they looked at various behaviours and compared the highest rated relationships, where each partner in that relationship rated those highly, versus the poorer relationships. So which was most important for the best quality relationships? Was it being there, the way you to respond, and the way you respond when somebody's sharing something wrong, something that's not wrong, some bad news, if you like, or the way you responded when people shared, what they were pleased about, some good news, like the stuff that you've just shared? So which do you think is the most important for the best quality relationships? Good news. Why is that? Sorry? Being empathetic, yeah, not being jealous, yeah. Other things, other thoughts? Both? Say more? Wave your hand, I can't see you. Yeah? Why is that? It's interesting, isn't it? It's really interesting. The answer was, in fact, the way you respond to good news was the thing that differentiated the highest quality relationships. I think because if you're not there when somebody's having a rough time, question whether you've got what sort of relationship you've got anyway. But the good news was the thing that made a difference. And it turns out that there are different ways we can respond to good news. And there's a bit of a spectrum. So we can respond in a passive way. We can be destructive, so actually chipping away at the relationship, or actually building and nurturing that relationship. So I'm going to do a bit of a demo. So I wonder if Mark could do bit of a demo. So I'm going to ask Mark to share some good news. Perhaps one of the things he wrote down on his 3 good things. So let's do. What's that here? Oh, hi, Mark.
Hello.
Let's go. We're going to do. Oh, yeah. How are you? What's been happening?
Oh, well, you know what, I cycled home from London yesterday, and it was surprisingly good. Like, there was not much traffic, and it felt really, really good. I love cycling, so that was good.
Oh, that's really great. Oh, that's really nice. Yeah. And then, can we get together and talk about that new project we're working on? Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Great.
Yeah, okay, what's that?
What style was I using there? Passive. Yeah, absolutely passive. What was I doing? I acknowledged it. I said, great, yeah. But then moved on to quickly onto the important thing that was in my mind that I needed to, talk to Mark about. So this is a very common style to use. This is the one that we often use. We very often. So think about who you use, which style with whom. So let's try another one. Take 2. So take 2. Oh, hi, Mark. How's it going? How's things going?
Same again?
Yeah, exactly the same again.
Okay.
Take 2, Mark.
So I love cycling. I cycled home from London yesterday, and it was like a surprisingly good journey, not much traffic, and yeah, felt really good.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, cycling's brilliant. I love cycling, don't I? It's really great. I've just got this new bike. It's really fantastic. It's one of the best bikes. It's just fantastic. I went for this really long cycle all around Richmond Park.
Really?
It was fantastic. Really fantastic. So what style am I using there? What am I... Yeah. Yeah, what am I doing? How does that make you feel?
Well, you kind of just made it about you, really.
Now reflect on which ones of these you use with whom. So how about this? Take 3. Oh, hi, Mark. How are you? What's been happening?
I'm good. I cycled back from London yesterday. I had a really good journey, not much traffic, felt great.
You cycled. God, do you know how many deaths there are on the road from cycling? And I know you had a really important meeting. Didn't you get really hot and sweaty? It was quite warm.
Yeah.
And you've got a wife and 3 kids. You really should be thinking about some of these things. And so... What am I doing there? Yeah, there's 2 sorts. And it's kind of interesting, both types of destructive responding. Because if I'm kind of connecting with Mark about, sharing that I love cycling too, when might I be doing that? When might I want to do that? Or feel drawn to doing that? Sorry? Yeah, but often we do that. Often when I want to build a connection with someone and show that, we've got the same hobbies, we've got the same interests, I'll go straight into, you can do that. I might be playing one-upmanship, but often we do that with people we really want to build a connection with. Yeah, I love cycling too. That's great. We've got something in common. But like you observed, what that does is it takes the attention from him back onto me, and it almost has the opposite effect. Likewise, identifying the risks and the downsides. Who do we do that with? So, teenagers in particular. Often we do that style with the people that we care for most, that we're most worried or concerned about. That's why parents with teenagers do it, because they're so worried about them doing something crazy that they immediately go into all the reasons why they shouldn't be doing something. So let's just do a take 4. And the only style that actively builds the relationships. So hi, Mark. How was yesterday?
Hi. Oh, it was good. I cycled back from London and had a surprisingly good journey, not much traffic, felt great.
Yeah, so what route did you take?
Oh, well, I come along the embankment and then I kind of cut back through Richmond Park back home again, and it was just one of those evenings where it kind of just went really well.
So really well, what was it? Why was it particularly good?
Well, you know what it's like. It's really, normally really dangerous. There weren't any idiot drivers that tried to knock me over, and just generally, I've been a bit ill recently, but then was feeling much healthier this week. So got home in time for my wife as well, which also helped. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. It was really great. So what was I doing? What did I do? Ask the questions. How many questions did I ask? Yeah, I don't even know. Maybe one or maybe two, I think. Yeah, 3. But it's really simple. But this is the constructive one. The effect that has. What did you notice about Mark? The way Mark responded and what he was responding with? Absolutely. So this is a bit like the 3 good things activity that you wrote down. It's helping them relive that experience. But what else? He opened up. I found out more about him. I found out that it was better because there was no traffic, so he really enjoyed that. He got home quicker. I found out that it was great for his wife. I found out that he hadn't been very well. And those are all things that enable me to understand and know Mark better, and therefore build the relationship better. So it's very simple. It's just as simple of asking a few questions. But it has a profound effect on the relationship. In fact, with teenagers, when we've worked with people with teenage kids, they've come back and said, they had amazing responses from their teenagers. Because does it mean, with this side, identifying the risks, should you never do that? No, you should, or no, you shouldn't? Well, this is a question of timing. Of course, if somebody is going to do something that's potentially dangerous and you're genuinely worried about them, of course you should identify those risks. But not before you've done some of this. Done a bit of constructive, because you understand them, what they're excited about, what they're interested about in this good news. And then, you learn more about it and you can respond appropriately, and then you can come back a short while later and just identify the risks. But it's something that really, it's a really simple thing, but it's really worth a thing that you might want to try. So why not have a... Thank you, Mark. Brilliant actor. So just have a chat to somebody else around you, somebody else, it's always quite nice to talk to me. Who do you tend to use which style with? But it's interesting. So maybe there's something in there when you think about the action you're going to take at the end of this evening. Maybe thinking about trying to respond more actively, constructively to somebody specific might be the action you choose. But just touching on one more quick thing, really, on something that helps us build our relationships and connect with others. Is this idea of, it's in technical terms, it's called strengths priming. So various studies have shown, in studies of coaching and indeed of therapy, that if the coach spends, so often those situations are about problems and issues that they're working on, but if the therapist or the coach spends a few minutes reflecting before the meeting with the client or the coach, the client or the coachee, reflecting on the client's strengths, so the qualities that are best about that person, the outcomes of the coaching or the therapy are more effective. So borrowing from that idea, this can be a really great thing to do with those nearest and dearest, and it's really good if you're really hacked off with them for something. So if they're annoying you, or there's something you want to talk to them about, find yourself getting riled, you might want to thinking about their strengths just for a minute or two. That it might, A, it helps you calm down, but B, it really will put, the way you connect with them, it will shift that. So we're just going to have a quick go at a bit of strength spotting. So I'm going to show you a video which most of you will have seen before, I'm sure, but just have a look at the video of Susan Boyle. Just have a look at, just think about what strengths you can see in Susan.
Hi, what's your name, darling?
My name is Susan Boyle.
Okay, Susan, where are you from?
I am from Blackburn near Bathgate, West Lothian.
It's a big town.
It's a sort of collection of villages. That's a thing there.
And how old are you, Susan?
I am 47. And that's just one side of me.
Okay, what's the dream?
I'm trying to be a professional singer.
And why hasn't it worked out so far, Susan?
I've not been given the chance before, but here's hoping it will change.
Okay, and who would you like to be as successful as?
Elaine Page.
Elaine
something like
Page.
that.
What are you going to sing tonight?
I'm going to sing I Dreamed a Dream from the Miserables.
Okay. Big song.
Yeah? Yeah.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by.
You didn't expect that, did you? Did you? No.
I dreamed of love that never died.
I love that hundreds of times. I love it. So what strengths did you see in Susan? Confidence. Sense of humour. Self-belief. Courage. Determination. Authentic. Right? It's amazing. I mean, to get up there and sing like that, she's really kept going and worked in the face of, how people reacted to her. Amazing, amazing qualities. And it's pretty easy to spot some of those things. And it's easy to spot, you can think about strengths in people you know. Good question. Not least his terrible haircut. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but it's true. So really, another thing, reflection, just thinking about, the thing that you might do at the end of the day, whose strengths might you focus on tomorrow? But I want us to kind of spend a couple of minutes in the last sort of main chunk, really, in just thinking about, it's all well and good focusing on other people's strengths, and that's really important. But what about what you pay attention to in you? We can often spend a lot of our time and attention about ourselves on the things we don't like, the things we don't feel are good enough, we don't feel as good as compared to someone else. But studies show that when, I won't show you this video of me, that when we identify and focus some of our strengths, you can do that via a survey, but you can do it in other ways too. That from a similar study to the one I showed you before, so this were people that identified 5 strengths, and they chose one that they worked on to try and to use in new ways. And again, this had an effect that increased their psychological well-being, their happiness, an effect that lasted 6 months out and reduced depression-type symptoms. And notice, I think it's curious here that it built. So this wasn't an immediate thing, a small immediate effect, but it built over time, because as we kind of start to think about what our strengths are and then start to think about how we might use those in different ways, that's something that builds over time. So I want you to spend just a few minutes reflecting on what maybe, one or two of your natural strengths are. What strengths do you have? We don't need a survey to do that, because there are often clues. There are clues in things that we loved to do as a child and still do, and maybe we are not doing enough of. There may be things that you really kind of just can't help to use, or things that you just learn really quickly when you're doing, and that you associate with the words I love to. So think about what those are, what your strengths are, and then think about maybe 1 or 2 ways that you might use those more. So turn to somebody nearby or somebody you haven't spoken to, and just spend a few minutes sharing. It's really interesting sharing stories of things that you loved to do as a child. One of my stories, a confession. When I left university, my first job was I trained to be an accountant, which I rapidly left after I qualified. But as a child, I was really, curious, and I was always making things, and I loved colour and creativity and stuff. But I was quite good at sciences at school, and so I studied those. And I left all that creativity stuff behind. And I ended up in a profession that I could do intellectually, but sapped the life out of me. And I would never have been great at it, ever. And it really took, blood, sweat and tears to get through that. But had I sort of tuned into the things that I'd love, those clues that were there when I was an 8-year-old kid, I might have chosen a slightly less painful path. I mean, I don't regret it, but I wouldn't do it again. So just share with somebody, what were some of the things that you loved to do as a child? And just what clues do those give to your natural strengths? Have a turn to somebody near you. Okay, let's hear. What were some of the strengths you heard? Hard to shout out your own strengths, but what were some of the strengths you heard in the people you were talking to? Just sense of humour. What? Creativity. Adventure. What? Climbing trees could be adventure, risk-taking, who knows? Balance. Yeah, what else? What other strengths? Empathetic. Empathy. Yeah, other strength. Yeah. Showing off. Yeah, showing. Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, other things. Imagination. Flexibility. Curiosity. Learning lyrics. Memory. Yeah. Being into songs. Yeah. Being open to people and things. Yeah, being open-minded, open to new ideas. Whole loads of strengths. So the question is, what strengths have you got that you're not using enough and you could use more of? Look at that. So in the last minute, we're going to do one very quick activity to finish off my bit, and then Susie's going to say a couple of words. So you've got a blank piece of paper. You should grab a blank piece of paper with your pen. That's all you need. Put everything else down. Super quick, super quick. Right, armed with your pen. Turn to somebody near you. You need to be in a pair. Or you need your pen and a piece of paper. It's a recap, it's revision. This is revision. So, I'm going to give you a challenge, but I'm going to then explain the rules. There's 2 rules. So the challenge is going to get you to draw a portrait of the person you're sitting opposite. But there are 2 rules. There are 2 rules. You have 1 minute to do it in, and you are not allowed to look at the paper. No cheating. No looking at the paper. On your marks, get set, go. Good look at the other person. Okay, now hold on to the paper. Hold on to the paper. Ask the person their name. Put the person you've drawn at the top of the paper. Put the name of the person you've drawn at the top of the paper. Put your name at the bottom. Sign your masterpiece. And now give them their creation. everyone get a good likeness? All right, so how may you ask, is that a recap activity? How can that be a recap activity of the 10 keys? Well, you gave the painting, your portrait. You connected with somebody. You were looking at them, giving them attention. You were exercising. Well, actually, I should have got you to stand up and you'd have moved around the room. We made her exercise. You were noticing the other person. You were noticing them. You tried out a new skill. You had a sort of micro goal to work towards. Bit of resilient thinking for many of you when I said you're going to draw a portrait. Everyone went, oh. Emotion that sounded like there was some of you at least were having some fun. Maybe looking at your portrait was a bit of self-acceptance. You might not have looked quite how you imagined you looked. And I don't know what meaning, but hopefully what we've covered tonight has kind of made you think about some of the sources of meaning in your life. But now, the serious part. You've got a little green card, and we just want you to take 1 minute to write down one action that you're going to take for yourself, for other people, something, and, don't promise the world. Just, if it's a small, well, you can if you want, but I would, do something small that you can do and that you will do, because you're more likely to do it. And you may want to just share that with the person next to you, because sometimes if we share our goals, we're more likely to do them. You don't have to, but you can. Oh, who was that? What's up? Go to the front of the class. I think it's an important thing to mention, because of course today is about, how we can be happier. But of course, I think it's really important to mention that life isn't always great. Sometimes we have downs. On my joggle today, this is a fish shop near where I live, and it was a guy that invested in this shop. He used to be a journalist at redundancy, invested, set it up, great fish shop. And it closed just after Christmas. I think it went bankrupt. He went bankrupt, which is really sad. But this morning when I walked past, this is in a Poisson, it's for sale. Somebody had made this and hung it up. This is from Northfield's Friends, that's their little residents association. Just so lovely. So sometimes life, is tough, and these small things can make a difference. And positive psychology is also maturing. And there's a lot now of research going on that actually how can some of this good stuff to learn that helps us be happier, how can it build our resilience for the tough times? And how can we learn? How do the tough times build our character? How do we grow through those? How do we experience post-traumatic growth perhaps rather than post-traumatic stress? So there's ever new and emerging stuff. But the thing that I wanted to end with is that it's not, there is no secret. It's about doing stuff and trying your best, really. And sometimes it works and suddenly it doesn't. But what I hope we've covered today, and there's loads on the website, there's loads more that you can find out. There's stuff that you can do, that you can take action with, that might just help you and help other people.
And hopefully this evening's triggered lots of thoughts and questions. So we've got 10 minutes left. I'd like to do one final announcement at the end, but we will wrap up at 8:30 because I know some of you have come from quite a long way away to be here. Show of hands, who'd like to ask a question to Susie or Vanessa or anything to do with this evening? So we've got a couple down here, some at the back. There's microphones coming. If you could keep your questions fairly brief, that'd be fantastic. Let's start with this lady here, Alex. Thank you. Yeah.
Hello. Can you help us to sort of identify people who are close? You said some people are far away. I mean, sometimes you can organise people, say, that's North London, that's South London, and you can then make a few connections even from here. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, so actually what we do with our Action for Happiness groups that we have, as Susie said, we have these kind of in local community settings. So in those contexts, we will reach out to other members and supporters that we know locally and connect people. But actually what's unique about this particular club concept is, as Susie said, inviting people into your own home. So I think actually there, it's about actually you feeling comfortable about people you invite into your home. So that may be reaching out to people in the community you don't know, but it may actually be people you do know or want to make a connection with. So
it's more like a book club. So there might be sort of someone on your school run or somebody that you know at the office that you think, oh, they're really nice, I really like them, but you're not quite sure how to move it on. And so I've been a member of a book club for 5 years, and we started off, didn't really know each other. Now, drunken rowdy lot, know them really well, and it's wonderful, and they're part of my support community. They're fantastic.
Thank you. Let's take this gentleman at the back here. Thank you, Alex.
I had a question about happiness and creativity. It seems like the two things may be closely related. I wondered if anyone had any thoughts on how the two things sit together.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I actually did my dissertation on the very subject. There's a lot of creativity research that's focused on genius creativity. But there's an emerging group that looks at different sorts of creativity, everyday creativity is one term, and that's actually what I'm interested in, because there ain't many true creative geniuses, but most people, pretty much everybody, can be creative in their own lives. So I think there's emerging research. So in terms of how that influences our well-being, our happiness, I think most of us would intuitively say there's a relationship, but I think the research is actually surprisingly in its infancy, certainly in the mainstream psychological literature. But I think it's interesting because it's through how we learn, it gives us meaning, gives us pure joy and positive emotions. So I think there is a relationship, but it's different for different people.
But there is also a kind of common, I think, fallacy that says, actually, if you look at many of the most talented geniuses throughout history, that maybe there's been a link to unhappiness and depression that's motivated them and triggered that creativity. I don't think my reading of the evidence really backs it up, that if you look at people when they aren't the most creative, if they are someone with a history of sort of, bipolar or various kind of mood swings, it's generally in their upbeat state where they are their most creative. If you are genuinely depressed and anxious, it's incredibly hard to be creative in that state of mind. So I think there's a common fallacy about negativity and depression being a source of creativity, actually. Thank you for that question. I pointed at this lady here, so I'm going to come back to here because I pointed at her and then we gave someone else the question. So if you've still got a question, let's go there. Thank you.
At the risk of opening up something massive here, I've been reading and learning a lot recently around psychology of game theory and things. I've recently been to see Tom Stoppard's new play, The Hard Problem, and that slightly contradicts what you've said, that the research shows that there's a virtuous cycle in mutual giving, and a lot of game theory talks about essentially people giving one over on each other. So I guess my short question is that something that you've thought about, or is there any research about it?
I would suggest you buy the book Give and Take by Adam Grant. So Adam Grant is a professor at Wharton Business School, not known for its soft and fluffiness, but his research is looking at pro-social behaviour and how that can be a long-term strategy for success. So game theory is all about strategies and stuff. So Give and Take by Adam Grant, I think you might find a few answers in there. Thanks.
Hi, you talked about obviously the flip side of happiness, the unhappiness, depression. In a happiness group, a group of amateur enthusiasts, how do you deal with those negative emotions in a constructive way without feeling out of your depth?
Sure. We just had our founding meeting today discussing that very thing. I think the response we came up was authentically. So it's being able to create a place where you can, a trusted place that you can say whatever is coming up for you, but also have some boundaries and things in place, like passing the spoon round and saying, we were coming up with creative ideas of how to manage that and bring that up right at the beginning to say, you've got 2 minutes to talk and then pass your spoon round, or to have a 5-minute whinge about whatever you want, but that's the rule, but you set it up from the beginning as part of your rules and expectations. And then maybe have resources for people who are really struggling, Samaritans or whoever, or a therapist that can help.
are some resources on our website about if people are struggling as well. So, yeah.
It's a really great question, because actually one of the biggest learnings we've had with Action for Happiness is that where the real magic happens is when you get people to connect face to face and have an honest conversation. So I think the vision for these clubs is to inspire more honest rather than trivial or superficial conversations. And I think when you have that environment, people naturally share their inner pains and challenges, but in a way that's, not group therapy, but it's actually a supportive, friendly conversation, and that's actually really important. Thank you for that question. We've got time for just two more. Let's take two at the back, because I can see one hand that Alex is pointing at and another one over there. Thank you.
See, this is a connected question on authenticity and the rate at which we might change our habits. If we try to change a lot of habits at once, and we find we're kind of acting in a way that also doesn't feel so much like us, is there a sort of don't try to do too much at once kind of wisdom in this? And how does the authenticity relate to the importance and value of what we're doing? Where does that fit in?
Well, I think definitely it's. I mean, you focus on one thing. Is probably easier than focusing on a whole range, and you're more likely to do it. I think there's. I've lost what I was going to say now. I think there's something about.
Can I just step in for 1 second while you're remembering?
Yeah.
Just 1 second. Gretchen Rubin, who wrote the Happiness Project, has just written a really brilliant book on habits called Better Than Before. And for me, I'm not very good at creating good habits, great at creating bad habits. But it's a really great read. So that's it. Just maybe in part of your research in answering that question, that might help. So.
The thing that could is sometimes there's a sort of a ripple effect, if you like, again, in changes we make. So making a small change in one area of our life actually enables us to make change. It builds our sense of self-efficacy and enables us to make other changes. They naturally follow. So I think it's, I think contain, stretch, do the thing, but don't try and do too much. Because if you try and change 10 things, you're never going to do it. Focus on one. That might lead to other things, and then you might think there's something else I want to focus on shifting. So, and that will be authentic.
Thank you. Okay, very last question, then we've got one final announcement and we'll wrap up. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for those very practical questions about authenticity and negative emotions, which is something that my question was actually about, which is more broadly, if one of the keys to happiness is acceptance, then how do people accept... I'm not a big fan, actually, of positive and negative emotions, but how do people accept emotions that are perhaps more uncomfortable or less socially acceptable? How do we work with those in a way, in the frame of positive psychology, without becoming our own thought police or rejecting parts of ourselves that aren't so upbeat or aren't so positive, and a way of bringing that into the fold of positive psychology without making it something quite superficial? And how do we embrace authenticity and honesty with other people to create those connections without rejecting those parts of ourselves or other people that aren't acceptable as being positive?
So it's going to. So we deliberately use the term self-acceptance because in the literature that is about acknowledging that there are stuff that are great and stuff that's not so great. And I think it's really important that when we talk about positive psychology, it's psychology. It's focused on what enables us to live flourishing lives. Part of that is actually noticing when we have difficult emotions. This is not positive thinking. Because that's not realistic, it's not sustainable, and it's not healthy the whole time. We have emotions for good reason. Sometimes they're not grounded, they're on thoughts that aren't grounded, but sometimes being angry is the right response. Sometimes being sad is the appropriate response, but it's just what's appropriate. And I think positive psychology as a kind of field is maturing. People are now talking about positive psychology 2.0, which is asking precisely those questions. What are the benefits of difficult emotions? How do we deal with difficult emotions? new wave, third wave therapies are starting to acceptance and commitment therapies, etc. So I think we're gradually the science is becoming more sophisticated and blending positive psychology with traditional psychology. It's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you for that. There is one final announcement I'd like to make before we close, but before we do that, please join me in giving a huge thanks to Susie and Vanessa for this evening. Thank you in particular to all of you who've come from such a long way. I know some people have come from Liverpool and Bristol and other places to be here, which is amazing. On the 20th of March, for the third year in running, there's going to be the United Nations International Day of Happiness. It's a kind of annual celebration that we've been involved with since the start and have the kind of privilege of having become the body that's organising a lot of the global campaigning about this. So I would like to invite one of our most trusted and passionate, fantastic volunteers, Alex, to come and say just a very brief word about what we're planning to do on the Day of Happiness on the 20th of March and how you might want to get involved and help us. Alex, over to you.
Hi everyone. Fantastic to see so many happy faces in front of me. It's always a massive pleasure. So it's the 20th of March. You've all got pens, you've all got paper. Please write that date down. I'd also like you to write down a web address, www.dayofhappiness.net. So we try and use the Day of Happiness, which was set up by the United Nations, as a way of really spreading the happiness agenda as far as possible and creating a sense of global solidarity around this movement. I really loved that aspect of Vanessa's talk, where she mentioned the research that actually your emotional state can travel up to 3 degrees of separation. If that's true, how far do our actions travel? So what this year we're doing is, the theme is your happiness is part of something bigger. As we've seen from the research, the most important thing for our happiness and well-being is the connections that we have with others. And yet we've designed modern society as if the opposite was true. We live in these metropolises surrounded by millions of people and have deep connections with fewer and fewer. And we've got these technologies in our pockets, the social media, that encourages more and more weak ties and fewer stronger ones. So we're using the day to invite people to make some real connections, to get out there and start really making a difference. And if that 3 degrees of separation thing is true, if every single person we invite to does make a new connection, think of the impact that can have. So in terms of the activities, we're going to be doing 2 principal things. One, we're inviting people to get involved in some online activity, to share something really authentic, something that means something to them in the same way. It could be one of the 3 good things exercises you've done today, or some kind of action you think would inspire people, to share that online as a picture or a quote using the hashtag International Day of Happiness, so that everyone around the world can see the activities that are going on. But the other thing we're doing is organising real-world activities. We're going to be doing what's called a positive message flash mob, which is where you get a big group of people together to create positive messages, to create new connections with each other. And it's not really so much about the messages themselves, though they may be fun and engaging. It's about the connections that you can create with a stranger by giving them that positive affirmation. So we're going to be running those in Washington, DC, London, Milan, Oslo. I've been in conversation with Kiev today, and that's a place that certainly could do with a bit more happiness. So we're going to be running those across the world. If you'd like to be involved in any way, do please come to that website. We're going to be relaunching the new campaign website at the very beginning of March. You can see all about the activities we're doing then. If anyone would like to be involved in a more substantial way, do please come and find me and talk to me at the end. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you all so much for being here. Sorry for slightly overrunning. And hopefully see you for our next event on the 25th of March on Can We Change the News for Good? Thank you so much. Good night.